Welcome to Power Lunch Live. I'm Rhett Power, your host. Good to be with you back here a second time this week as we ramp the show back up after a little bit of a break. But anyway, it's good to be back with you today. The point of the show is to have today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, CEOs, people who are doing amazing work in the world that we can all learn from. And, today I've got somebody that I really, really enjoy talking to on a periodic basis. And I think just because I think she's one of the most interesting people in the world. Ariel Garten. Ariel is a neuroscientist, a mom, a former psychotherapist, a former fashion designer. Those things don't normally go together, but that's why you're really interesting. And I think one of the reasons, and really more importantly, a visionary and a highly successful entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur with the startup Muse. And Ariel, it's good to have you back.
It is wonderful to be here today, Rhett. Hello. Always nice to chat with you.
It really is because, you see the world really in an interesting way. And I think it's refreshing. And it's so I always feel inspired after talking to you. So thank you. Thank you for being back. So what is new with Muse and you? And I know you've got all kinds of things going on. New product. I mean, well, tell us what's going on. Tell us, so give us an update for Muse.
Sure. So last we spoke. So the brief update from Ariel land is that I'm 5.5 months pregnant with an adorable baby girl. I'm assuming she's adorable. These are the assumptions that one makes when you've got the little baby inside your belly, and it doesn't help to think much else. So that's the exciting news in Ariel world. In the world of Muse, we have a new product, which is Muse S, that helps you sleep. So when we last caught up, we were talking all about meditation and how Muse gives you real-time feedback on your brain during meditation to help with that fascinating act. And what we discovered from our users was that many people were using Muse to meditate as they were falling asleep because it was helping them sleep significantly. So we actually created a purpose-built device called the Muse S, which is soft and comfortable to wear, so comfortable you can actually fall asleep in it. And we've built a variety of really amazing interventions that we call digital sleeping pills that actually use your own brainwave activity and biorhythms to just walk your brain into sleep. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, it'll automatically bring in the same intervention to help you fall back asleep again.
Okay. Wow. How does that work? I mean, talk us through that. Like, so
Sure.
People are new. Again, I think a lot of people are discovering meditation. They're discovering, and they're being, more in tune, I think, with their bodies and with health. Talk to us about how this works and why this is a way that maybe if you're having trouble sleeping, this might help you.
Sure. So the Muse actually has 4 clinical grade EEG sensors, 2 on the forehead and 2 behind the ears, as well as a PPG sensor for the heart rate. And it's able to actually track your sleep basically as effectively as a sleep lab. So the same as being in a sleep lab would know in detail your levels of stage 1 sleep, hypnagogia, REM sleep, sleep spindles, etc. The Muse is able to sensitively detect your levels of wakefulness. And so what we do is Muse is giving you a beautiful guided audio experience that's actually built from your biosignals. It's a responsive soundscape. And as the Muse detects that you're moving from awakenness into stage 1 sleep, it actually starts to move and shape the audio to slow it down, to quiet it down, to encourage your brain into sleep. Because most of us go through our lives as we fall asleep, our brain is still going. And so we give you a focus point for your brain to quiet that discursive wandering mind. And then we guide it simply with sound down into a quiet space. And then once you're asleep, the device knows and it automatically shuts off. So there's no chance of it waking you back up again. But if you do happen to wake up in the night, the device will wake up with you because it's tracking your levels of wakefulness. And then it'll bring back in the same beautiful guided audio that will, again, walk your brain back into sleep. And as you're asleep, shut it back off again. And it's incredibly effective. So in a study just done by Dr. Adrian Owen's lab, he's a renowned British neuroscientist, they demonstrated a 20% improvement in sleep quality on the gold standard Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, including falling asleep faster and staying asleep longer.
So, okay, I coach a lot of executives, and one of the things I hear all the time is I'm so tired because I can't cut my mind off at night. So, I mean, this sounds like it could really be a solution to people who, just can't, their brain and their way they're wired doesn't, they lay down and they start thinking of the million things that they've got to do tomorrow or they didn't get done today. This seems like it could maybe quiet some of that. Was that the intent? Or
Precisely. Very, very much so. So, meditation is the first approach to quieting your mind. And with Muse or with any meditation practice, you learn to shut down the activity of your mind, your discursive thinking, by recognizing you don't need to be doing it at that moment. So, your mind wanders to a thought. In meditation, you then go, hey, I don't need to be thinking this thought. I can just let it go and bring my attention back to something neutral like my breath. And so, you're really training yourself in that practice. So, with this device, we both offer those meditation trainings that just teach you to let go of the thoughts and come on back to the present and allow yourself to fall asleep. And we actually have this active intervention. So, you don't even need to figure out what to do yourself, that really encourages your brain to be engaged in the content rather than its discursive thinking, and then just let itself go when it's ready to do it. And oh my God, it's so nice.
I have to confess, it is really nice, and it does help bring you that kind of take that anxiety away, and it kind of brings that peace and that quiet that I mean, I know that before I started meditating, that you'd wake up kind of stressed from falling asleep stressed,
Yeah.
right? And that it was never a good way to start the day. So I agree with you. I think it does help you end your day well and start your day well. Um, how do you, without a coach, and somebody that can help you, talk about some of the Muse products a little bit more. I know we covered it before, but we have new people listening. Uh, Talk about the products and how they help you learn to meditate and learn. I don't know if it's not really a skill though. I mean, but it is a practice. I guess it's a practice, really.
It's also a skill. I mean, you practice at the thing to improve the skill.
Fair enough.
And actually, interestingly, the skill that you're building is mindfulness. So, people often wonder what's the difference between meditation and mindfulness. So, meditation is the practice or training that you do. It's the, sitting, focusing your attention, training your mind. And the skill that then becomes built from that is mindfulness, the ability to become aware of your thoughts, feelings, sensations throughout the day. And then, if you choose to, allow those to be the same or different. So, definitely lots of skill involved. With Muse, we make the active learning to meditate much easier by actually giving you real time feedback on your brain during meditation. So, most of us sit down to meditate. You sit down for the first time and you think your brain's supposed to go blank, and it never does. And your brain is kind of bouncing all over the place. And you're like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? I have no idea. This is
Didn't
awful.
work.
And there's no little coach or guru sitting inside your head saying, yes, just let go of that thought, focus on your breath. Yeah, you got it, you got it. So with Muse, we solve that problem by literally giving you real-time feedback on your brain's activity during meditation. It's EEG sensors that are able to detect when you're in focused attention, the meditation zone, and when your mind is wandering. And it translates your brain activity into guiding sounds. So when your mind is wandering, you hear it as stormy. And as you come to quiet, focused attention, it quiets the storm and then rewards you for being in this quiet zone. So it's super effective to help you know actually what to do. And if you're an experienced meditator, it gives you a whole new lens into your meditation practice and really lets you sharpen and hone your attention and your awareness of your thoughts.
How is that different? How does the brain, going back to the sleep, how does the
Mhm.
brain function um, during sleep, and how do I mean, is it, and how does this help us sleep better? I mean, what is the science behind that?
Sure. So, as your brain is falling asleep, the first stage that it enters into is stage one sleep. Prior to that, what you see is an increase in alpha wave activity. So, while you're meditating, and there's a number of different ways to explain it, they're all quite cool. So, when you're meditating, you are really becoming more coherent in your brain. You're having an overall increase in alpha activity, which is a slower wave activity. You're also seeing an increase in theta coherence. And you're essentially teaching your mind that it doesn't need to be engaged in this conscious discursive thought, that it doesn't need to be thinking about all of these things. And it is these ideas in your brain that, cause you to think about them more and be awake, to follow those trails of thought, or cause anxiety or stress that then ramps your body, which then makes it hard to sleep. As you're falling asleep, when you first lie down, you close your eyes and you see an increase in alpha activity. So in some ways, you are in a state that is similar to meditation, not the same, but has similar characteristics. As soon as you start falling into sleep, you see a complete decrease in alpha activity. Alpha just completely disappears. You start to see an increase in delta activity, and you are in stage 1 sleep, which is this very cool state called hypnagogia. So you might, hypnagogia. It sounds so trippy, because it is. So as you're falling asleep, you may feel familiar with this experience of like images coming in and stuff, becoming kind of dreamy and not totally making any sense. That is the beginning of sleep. And if you wake somebody up in that stage, they'll say like, oh, I wasn't sleeping. No, not me. But they were in stage 1. At the beginning of stage 2 sleep, what you see is these very cool things called K complexes. So that's another big brainwave signal that comes in to actually protect your brain from outside noise. So it's like we're going into the sleep zone. We don't want anything to bug us now. So you see K complexes, sleep spindles, and from there you drop into deep sleep. So very, very high distinctive delta activity. And in that delta activity, your whole brain is like resonating at the same slow wave pulse. It's like your whole brain's kind of speaking the same language to itself. It's all being bound by this one strong, slow wave signal. And you get a few good hours of that. Ideally, you want about 20% of your night to be in delta, in your deep, deep, deep sleep. You get a few good hours of that at the beginning of your night. It helps consolidate your memory. It helps actually flush out toxins from your brain with something called the glymph system. And then you sort of dip back up into stage 2, which is light sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, deep sleep. And then the second half of your night is typically REM sleep. And so you'll go REM, light, REM, light, REM, light, until you finally awaken. So that is what is happening in your brain during sleep.
What's happening during REM? What's the point of each stage? Do we know?
We don't know. We can make some guesses and assumptions. All we know is that all of the stages are important. If you drop one of the stages, you end up having, deficits in cognitive function, etc. So you need REM just as much as you need deep sleep. We know that in deep sleep, the brain is both consolidating memories as well as deciding which memories to forget. So this is really cool. Okay. So when you, park your car in the same lot every single day in different spots, your brain actually chooses to forget where you parked the day before, so that when you go to park the next day, don't mix up the parking spots. So our brain actually does active forgetting as well as active remembering. And then it's very cool. And then in REM sleep, we have memory consolidation again in a slightly different form. So in REM sleep, it's kind of like your brain is opening up all of its file cabinets with images and emotions and associating the day's events, understandings, learnings with all of the old filings and deciding what it's going to associate, where it's going to store it, how it's going to keep it. And that's why our dreams tend to both be, very intensive and seem to have sometimes these emotional qualities to them.
Okay, that is really, I could go on and on with questions about that, but so going to again your experience in neuroscience, overcoming what your brain tells you with anxiety, fear, and bias, and how to overcome it. Like, how does talk about that a little bit, because
Sure.
I want to understand. I want to understand that more.
Yeah, and let's really dig in and understand it from the brain's perspective. So anxiety, fear, bias, all of these things are dominated by our amygdala and our limbic system. That's the part of our brain that's responsible for the flight and fight response. So anything that could possibly go wrong in your world, your amygdala has attached to and is sending signals out about it. So, that's super helpful when there's a tiger that's chasing you or a forest fire up above that you need to, catch every glimpse of the flicker and every smell and be able to respond to it immediately.
Right.
Not super helpful when our amygdala is hyper responding to an email from our boss that we haven't yet read. So our amygdala is very good at representing fear-based information over and over and over again because it really needs you to pay attention. It really needs you to pay attention to all of the signals of that fire, any distant roar of that lion. Not that we ever lived with lions chasing us, but you know what I'm getting at. But these days, our amygdala is equally as adept at presenting the same information over and over and over again if it fears that you maybe have a stain in your pants going into a meeting, or if you're stuck in traffic and you're late. And it's just going to tell you over and over again, stuck in traffic, stuck in traffic, stuck in traffic, because it needs you to pay attention to it. So that's one process that goes on in our brain constantly. And there's another, thankfully, more powerful process in some ways that goes on, and that's the one that comes from our prefrontal cortex. So prefrontal cortex is kind of like the CEO or the parent of our brain. It's the part of our brain that's responsible for judgment, decision-making, metacognition, the ability to sort of rise above and see a scenario, thinking, planning, higher order organization. And so when we do something like engage in meditation practice, what we're actually doing is we're strengthening our prefrontal cortex's ability to downregulate our amygdala. So our amygdala might come with a piece of information like, oh no, traffic. And if you're not attending to that thought, if you're just letting your amygdala go and go and go and go and go, then that's all that your brain is going to be filled with. If you instead make a choice to come in and say, hey, I heard that thought of traffic, rather than letting this play on autopilot in my brain, which my brain just wants to do because that's what it's going to do, I can actually come in and make the choice to say, hey, I know I might be stuck in traffic. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't need that information anymore. I don't need to think that thought. I can let go of it. And your prefrontal cortex actually sends a signal down to your limbic system that says, limbic system, shh, it's all good. Like, just chill out right now. Just stop, please.
Right.
And when you do that over and over again, it takes time, it takes practice to build the skill. It is both a skill and a practice. When you take time to do it over and over again, you actually strengthen the connections between your prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, and you're better able to make better judgments with the actual information in the world rather than just be driven by your fear.
Do you think meditation, because that's some people would equate that to the voice in your head, right? The how we talk to ourselves, right? And do you think that meditation can help us sort of short circuit those conversations, make them healthier, and so that the brain is saying, "Shh, it's okay," that because we often listen to that other voice that's trying to cause us anxiety and fear and stress.
Totally.
It
So
seems yeah, go ahead.
there's lots of fun studies that actually show that happen. So that voice in our head, that internal dialogue, is a loop in our brains called the default mode network. And it goes between the
Right.
prefrontal cortex and the posterior cingulate cortex. And when you put somebody in an MRI machine and you tell them to just do nothing, just lie there and think about nothing, just be, you're going to see most of the brain nice and quiet, but you're going to see this loop continue to go, the default mode network, just that internal chatter. And when you put somebody with a long-term,
You can see that.
yeah, yes, you can
Fascinating.
see the two areas light up. And then when you put somebody with a long-term meditation practice inside an MRI machine and you tell them the same thing, you don't see activation of the default mode network. So meditation literally quiets that internal dialogue. It literally teaches that internal voice to say, hey, this isn't helpful or useful right now. Shh, all good.
Okay, so I'm writing a book on our internal dialogue. So I have to have you. I have to interview you for this because this is that's really interesting. So I'm going to make a note to give you a call because
Circle back.
circle back on that because that's
Totally.
interesting.
And what we also see from the data is people with higher activation of the default mode network, maybe more prone to depression, for example,
Mhm.
because the kinds of ruminative thinking that you have in depression engage that same network. So, that network is very critical, and how we engage with it can really determine our mental health.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Um, we talked a lot before. We talked about before these, Muse and the tools that you've created, the products you've made, as a real help for entrepreneurs and leaders. Um, Talk about that a little bit, and why you focus there.
Sure. So as an entrepreneur, I certainly know what it's like for your brain to be racing with 100 projects and for you to not want to shut it off because, there's just so much to do. There's just so
Yeah,
much. I've, raised millions and millions and millions of dollars for this company. I've got, 40 employees to manage. I have all of these things. And as a young entrepreneur, if you told me to meditate, I would have told you, well, I, I don't want to. I don't want to shut off these voices. I need to do all these things. Come on, go, 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 go. As a more seasoned and mature individual in the next phase of my life, and also with the background and understanding actually how meditation strengthens the brain and strengthens the smart way to do these things rather than the scrappy I'm gonna keep working till I die way of doing it.
right.
Which I definitely subscribe to. Um, Meditation is incredibly key to help you make better decisions, focus on what's important, be able to understand what to listen to and what not to manage the insane anxiety that
Yeah.
comes along with being an entrepreneur and having all of the responsibility for yourself, your employees, etc. It makes you a better employer, and more able to listen to and engage with your employees. The benefits go on and on.
So I want to ask you a question about your take on tech, and sort of pull out your crystal ball a little bit. But first question is, how do you feel about women in tech right now? Do you feel encouraged? Do you feel positive, or do you feel like we're not making enough headway? And I mean, you've raised, I think, upwards of $18 million, or over $18 million for Muse. Uh, Talk about that a little bit too, and how do you feel about women in tech and being able to get money from VCs? Because it's still pretty rare that a woman tech entrepreneur can raise money.
Yeah, so it was much rarer before. So how I'm feeling right now is bullish and optimistic. I started this company in 2009. Muse has been in market for 7 or 8 years now. It's a
Right,
seasoned product. We're no longer a startup. We're a mature company.
right.
Um, and when I started, there were very few women in tech. I probably got some meetings because I was a woman, and I was able to get further because
Hmm.
there were no other women around, and people are like, who is this rare bird who like has the guts to show up at our office and say these things? so I stood out, but I'm sure there are also a whole lot of deals that I lost because I you know was not a guy in the position that I would have otherwise have been in.
Right.
And at the
The
time
same
people would
with the same credentials and the same, are better, right? Yeah.
And at the time, people would ask me, what's it like? I was a CEO of a startup company in 2010. They'd ask me, what's it like being a woman in tech? And I would get defensive at that. I'm like, well, why does it matter that I'm a woman? Like, no, I'm a CEO. We're doing a good job. And then I recognized just how utterly despondent the reality of the female in technology was, and that it was essential to champion this and to, shine it from every rooftop. Fast forward 9 years later, by 2019, we're starting to talk about the value of women in tech, women on boards, equality, um, the paltry amount of money that women raise. The stat is something like 2.8% of VC funds go to women. It's
Right.
really disgusting. But as a result, actually, to the point where I even once had a VC who invested in us, probably around 2015. And when I sat in his office, he was like, charting these grand plans of what he was going to do and his venture company and blah, 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 blah. And he drew a box on the wall and he said, we're going to put a moat around investing in women. This is going to be our strategic differentiator. And I'm just sitting there. biting my tongue and taking his cash to do better with it, we hope, we try, we strive. So these days, we're seeing equal amounts of tokenism. However, and, equal amounts of investing in women in tech because
Right.
it's a cool thing to do. And, now we have to have a woman on every board. Otherwise we look bad. So, a lot of it is still lip service and just making sure that everybody's checking the boxes and using it as, brand elevation. The upside of that is that we're really seeing a lot more women getting funded, and we really are seeing a lot more women on boards, and we really are seeing significant improvements. There are now, funds that just want to invest only in women. I'm an investor in one of them called Portfolio. So, it is on the rise. The glass ceiling has cracked. Some of it's not for the best reasons. However, we will significantly benefit from it. And there is definitely no better time to be a woman in tech.
Yeah. What are you really excited about? You just mentioned Portfolio, but what are some of the companies that you're looking at that you've seen or that are out there that you're really excited about? And what they bring?
Oh my God, there's so many cool things happening in this world. The world of technology is moving so quickly. So one company that I'm an investor in is called ReadySpec, and they have an basically in an optometrist office, you can get an analysis from your eye about whether or not you have Alzheimer's. So they're able to detect amyloid beta just using a very standard optometrist camera, and do it as effectively as a lumbar puncture or PET scan, both of which are highly invasive and unpleasant and very expensive. So, the world of medicine is moving along very, very quickly. And the kinds of innovations that we're going to find to alleviate what ails us, some of which we created as a result of using technology, including our Earth, but what ifs. We're creating solutions to alleviate what ails us.
How so sort of I gotta ask the required COVID question, but how are with the labor shortages and challenges with retaining talent and keeping people, how are you guys dealing with that, and have you experienced this challenge sort of in the last 2 years or so?
Yeah. So in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. We've been very, very lucky. Initially, as soon as COVID came in March 2020, we were already experiencing backlogs. Our shipments in China, if in February, were already being blocked. That was on top of the tariff issues that we were having because tariffs were being added to things. We were unable to get parts. And then Amazon in March 2020 completely shut down all of its orders. And Amazon's a major channel of ours. So, here we are out a couple $1 million in revenue because Amazon's not selling anything but essential goods.
Right.
So, that was definitely a difficult period to manage the transition to work from home, be able to maintain cohesion and support and enthusiasm amongst a team who's for the first time distributed. Somehow we managed to recover quite effectively. We do make a meditation tool and have a ton of meditation and psychological resources for all of our staff to feel connected and together and to manage our stress and anxiety. So that was very, very helpful. And we actually began creating lots of resources and content for people to use Muse to do the same, to sleep better, to manage their anxiety, to deal with the stress of COVID, the lack of safety, sensations, etc. And our business ended up doing actually extremely well. So, we more than recovered the slump. Our revenues increased year over year, even through the first year of COVID. So that was wonderful. In some ways it was the thing that people needed at that moment. It's like, I'm stressed out, I'm stuck at home, I've got lots of time. How do I not go crazy?
Right.
So
Right.
it was an honor to be able to be there in the right way to help people at that time with one of the solutions that actually worked that people needed. We'd get emails from people being like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Like, I would have gone crazy without this. Thank you. So that was amazing. And since then, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And since then, things have really stabilized. There's definitely particularities of COVID that are still difficult. Our mold will get stuck in China in one factory because it's closed off, and we need to contact the government to get somebody permission to go in to move it to the other factory. So, we're managing small things like that. But overall, we've acclimatized to the work from home. We've found we've actually improved work-life balance, means of maintaining connection, etc. So it's actually been, thank God, like knock on wood, pretty good.
Talk about sort of the last question about that is, in my conversations with CEOs and leaders in the last few months, I'm really fascinated how, because you've moved to a remote sort of work environment, how are you building collaboration? I mean, how are you working to get your teams to collaborate and be as innovative as they used to be, or how do you look at collaboration with your teams?
It's a great question. Also, particularly interesting considering our CTO moved out to like northern Canada, like many hours north, totally away from everybody. Embracing technological tools is, of course, key. So, Zoom meetings are very powerful ways of keeping people engaged and together, and the tools like Slack, etc. Our our team is about 60 people, so I think it's a pretty good size for distributed working, because that means each of the individual teams, like, finance, marketing, customer care, etc. Each team is, anywhere from 4 to 8 people. So that means that individual unit can work together still quite cohesively, maintain contact throughout the day, have group Zoom calls and Slack channels and all of the things that keep them engaged as a team. And then we have always had a standing Tuesday meeting with the entire company, and that maintains. And this year and last year, we've had to do things like our all team visioning over Zoom. So, we have a big Miro whiteboard. We have people break up into teams, come up with their answers to strategic questions, bring those back to the larger team, present, put it on the whiteboard, vote, etc., all on a virtual platform. And it's been surprisingly successful. We've had people who have joined the team in the last 2 years and have never met anyone in person. And as odd as it is, they feel relatively integrated, up to speed, loved, supported. And, a key part of like sort of sense of team is ensuring that you are aware of the individual's personal life, their needs, their preferences, their loves, and that you can support them in that, that you can have honest conversations about your life. We have these things called like donut coffee chats, and you're just randomly split up with somebody to just chat with for 15 minutes and hang out and be yourself and be honest and authentic. So, that sense of honesty and authenticity makes it much easier to truly connect in the virtual medium.
Ariel, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, it is my joy and pleasure.
All right. Thank you for spending some time with us here on Power Lunch. We'll be back next week with a couple more shows, actually live from Dubai and then Valencia, Spain. So we're going to be on the road next week, but we'll be live in those two locations at the Global Citizens Forum and then at Startup Valencia. So Ariel, thank you so much. We will definitely check in and check out Muse's webpage for the products. I'm sure you can buy there. I think you can buy on Amazon as well, correct?
Yep, on Amazon or on choosemuse.com. And then we also have corporate programs. For a corporate program, you can actually email me at ariel@choosemuse.com.
There you go. And thank you. We'll see you next